Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tom and this is Dudeson Reviews, and today we're going to be swapping things out. Other than Star Wars that we've spoken about on this channel, I think it's time to maybe talk about something else that isn't just Star Wars, because there's so many franchises that, I absolutely enjoy, and, we haven't spoken about anything else yet. So I think today we're going to delve into the land of Marvel, and this is just going to be a very informational sort of video, but there is something I want to include in this where you'll find out what my favourite Marvel film is and the ones leading up to that, and you'll also find out why some of the ones at the beginning of the list aren't the ones that I like and for what reasons and stuff. So yeah, if you want to see that, then stick around because that's what we're going to be doing today. But first, let's just talk about Marvel. So as my introduction goes to Marvel, I think it's the same as everyone. You're a kid, Saturday morning cartoons, and you'd have like the X-Men animated series or the Hulk animated series, or the Spider-Man animated series, which was probably the one I watched the most and kept up with the most when I was a kid. But going on from that, obviously, then the films started to come out. So I remember when X-Men came out, the first film, and yeah, I had that on VHS and absolutely run that thing till basically it wouldn't work anymore. When I was a kid, just had it on repeat and stuff. And the same with the Spider-Man film that came out. As I got a little bit older towards the teens, I could obviously start watching like stuff like Blade. I think because of how rated that was with the blood and stuff in it, then it was just kind of something that I never got a chance to watch at the time. But yeah, I got to I think I was about like 12, 13, and then obviously watched them, fell in love with those films. At that point, obviously, we'd had the other X-Men films. I remember going to see X-Men 2 in the cinema, and that was like one of the coolest cinematic experiences I ever had because of the opening scene. Was just like kind of just amazing, especially considering no one had seen it yet. So just to have that opening scene was really cool. Plus, Nightcrawler is one of the top X-Men that I do obviously like, and yeah, it was just a really cool opening. To get to see that in cinema when I was a kid was awesome. Moving on from that sort of stuff, yeah, then the MCU got announced, and we had Iron Man, and then the Hulk film, and yeah, it's just really cool to see how obviously Marvel kind of just swapped it around where things that were basically just for the nerds ended up becoming kind of mainstream, and now we have all sorts of people being into this kind of franchise, and yeah, it's really cool. For me, Marvel is right up there because it's been a massive part of my life growing up, with the films, with the cartoons, some of the games, and not as many of the comics, but yeah, I still obviously collected a couple of comics growing up, and I've still got a couple of comics now to do with Marvel, so it's definitely a part of my interests and stuff like that. For me, I want to talk about a little bit how Marvel is now compared to what it once was, because I think there's a big concept at the moment that obviously Marvel films are just filler at the moment for the last couple of years, but there is a couple of things that aren't too bad when it comes to driving the story in the newer films at the moment. Not saying that it makes up for the films being bad, it's just that there is little tidbits in there that do help create the next part of the story or add on from what happened in the past, with obviously the MCU building all the way up to Infinity War and Endgame. Those little bits I do think kind of are good to have and everything, but I understand the frustration between a lot of people with the newer stuff when it comes to the story. I don't feel like it's as creative or as free for the people who go on to this kind of work to actually do the things that they envisioned and wanted to do. So yeah, I can understand the frustrations with seeing some of the newer films, but again, we've also just come out of SAG strikes and stuff like that, so where Hollywood's industry of filming was on pause for a bit while actors and stuff were obviously fighting their rights and everything. These things do take a toll on modern day cinema, especially big companies such as Disney and stuff. So, you know, the kind of stories and the delays and those sort of things are going to be a big part of why a lot of the stuff that we see feels rushed and doesn't feel like it's got as much heart in it. I think every single project that ever gets taken on, if it's taken on by someone who's got a passion for it, they should always put their full into it. And, you know, if it means having to do less projects over a course of time to make those projects hit not only with the box office but with the fans, for them to want to be invested in these franchises and continue down the road to watch the future ones that are followed from that film, then yeah, I think, you know, going back down to doing like one Marvel film a year or 2 Marvel films a year would be better than having like 3 or 4 plus a series or something in between. It's gonna fall short where, you know, deadlines need to be met and it's fast paced through the processes in order to basically give you something that's not as good as it could have been. However, there is a few things that they are doing correctly. In my opinion, this whole new Deadpool versus Wolverine, it is a great move for Disney. It does need to still land. The one thing obviously they're trying to piggyback off of is the success of having the original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, and then the Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, come into obviously the MCU with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And as a one-time thing, it was really cool. It was something that I never thought we would ever get. I don't think any of us thought we were ever going to get that, especially in live action with the Spider-Man film. And it worked. It's a OP character. The character's franchise has been going, you know, hard in the film community since the early 2000s. It was the right move to make. Going back into the next film after that, which was Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, obviously we've had cameos in that then. Some cameos were cameos of people that we didn't know we wanted, such as like Peggy Carter as, you know, Captain Carter. Like, we seen that in the What If series, and it was a really cool episode. Did it translate right onto the camera? I think it could have, but again, that whole scene with having these characters come in and then immediately be cut straight out of it, it just felt like a forced cameo, if that makes sense. And again, because of, you know, the internet getting involved and saying who they wanted Reed Richards to be, I feel like, you know, that casting role was made purely just to say, here you go, fans. But then, like I said, 5 minutes later he was ripped out of the film. Kind of didn't really matter. So I feel like they looked at the success of Spider-Man and then rushed that moment in that film to just be like, oh, well, this did well. If we pull old characters and characters that people have said on the internet that they want to see, we can make a quick profit. And unfortunately, no, because Marvel fans aren't that dumb. We have lived with these characters, with these stories for, you know, most of our lives. So when you try and just do a quick, oh yeah, you said you wanted this and these characters and stuff like that, and here they are, and it doesn't work. Like, you know, it has to be a part of the cohesive story as well if you're going to do that. You can't just literally go, oh, and by the way, if you go down this road, you'll see this people, and no, it doesn't work. You need to have it cohesive with the story, and that's why Spider-Man worked, because it took what we wanted from a Spider-Man film and flipped it on its head, but it worked with the story that they were trying to deliver in that 2.5 to 3 hour period of time that we were watching. With the Multiverse of Madness, everything was already teeing up in a totally different way, and then all of a sudden, oh, just so happens to be that in this universe there's a place where the characters that people have voted that they wanted to see in a film for a cameo just happened to all be there, and then ripped straight out of the film 5 minutes later. It's a cheap trick, basically. That's what it felt like. And I think with this new Deadpool and Wolverine film, I'm hoping that this isn't going to be a film full of the multiverse of madness tricks, where they're just going to be, oh, one scene, different cameo, next scene, different cameo, next scene, different cameo. Oh, look who's in the background, this person. Look who's in the background here, that person. Like, I understand that because he's going to be hopping across the multiverse, most likely in this thing, that you're going to have all of these cameos of different characters. Maybe there'll be people that we haven't had before that just, you know, some sort of fan base online wanted in the film. Some of them will probably be OG characters I'm expecting from the X-Men films, just like how in Multiverse of Madness we obviously got Charles Xavier, or a form of him anyway. But like I said, it has to be cohesive to the story. If the characters are just dropped in just to be like, hey, by the way, we're here, and then disappear 2 minutes later, not saying all characters, but you know, the ones that certainly have a moment on screen that is meant to be like cohesive to the story, and then they just drop them, it's gonna flop. The film will flop. If they have gone down the road where, yes, okay, you're going to have these characters popping in, but it's going to drive the story forward, and for them to be in that moment makes sense. In otherwise, this couldn't have happened further along the story, and at the end of it, we feel like this is actually going to be leading into the MCU cohesively. Yes, cameos all day long, fair enough, put them in, but at the moment, I like what they're doing by bringing Hugh Jackman back with Wolverine. When they started to mention casting different people for Wolverine, I think a lot of people just couldn't get on board with it. And honestly, I did think at one point that it would be the right move to still get Hugh Jackman to be in the MCU at some point. After obviously Logan, and we thought this was going to be his last role, we didn't think that was going to happen, so it made sense that they started casting. But was we all happy? No, we wanted to see Hugh Jackman in the MCU, and that is something obviously that they are delivering on now. We're getting the yellow suit, so fans in that aspect, that is the right move to do by the fans. I think that's the perfect move like Disney could have done with the MCU going forward. However, like I said, any other characters pushed into this film from previous films, or like I said, just internet fan characters that people want to see in those roles and stuff, it could be the thing that brings too much weight to the film and really let it down. And I really hope that's not going to be the case. So yes, I'm excited for the new stuff that's coming out. Some of the newer films that have come before it, like the Marvels and stuff, I really didn't enjoy. But like I said, there's little pieces of these films that still drive a bit of the story forward. Obviously with the Marvels, the end credit scene kind of helps going forward with X-Men. So it's worth watching just that little bit, even if you don't want to watch that whole film. Again, in Loki, you know, it's obviously apparent that you have to watch the Loki series just to get an idea of what's going to be going on with the new Deadpool film. And don't get me wrong, I think the last series of Loki was the better series, but I wasn't on board with it with the first series. I wasn't on board with it all the way up until probably the end of the first series. It left it on a cliffhanger, which was enough for me to want to watch the second series, but I wasn't invested as much as maybe some people may have been during the first series. It was, like I said, only till I got to like the last 3 episodes of Loki that it kind of did something for the rest of the MCU going forward, and that's why I enjoyed those 3 episodes. But yeah, like I said, a lot of the new stuff at the moment Marvel are putting out just seems to be that unless you're looking for those tidbits that are going to help drive towards, the newer films that they've got planned coming out, obviously with Deadpool and then anything else after that in the works, then in my opinion, yeah, they haven't been that great. But let's look at previous films. We can turn around and say, well, Iron Man was one of the best, and the first Avenger, Captain America, was one of the best. We can say all of these films are, some of the best ones and everything. And yeah, in some way, they do feel a lot more like there was love and care put into the scripts and put into the process to make the films, which obviously does land on camera very well and probably does give more of a reason why these films do hold up and why we still enjoy them. But we can't deny that during the time of the first Iron Man film all the way up to Infinity War and Endgame, we can't deny that in between then there was a couple of bomb movies. There was some movies that just didn't hit. Like, I don't know if it's just a collective thing, but I can honestly say that other than the first Iron Man, the other 2 Iron Man I don't really watch because for me they're not enjoyable. I probably have only ever watched the first 4 once or twice, and Dark World, I think it's called. This is how bad it is, like with the 4 films, that I can't even remember like the full title of the second one. I think I might have watched it once, possibly twice, but if I did watch it a second time, I was not paying attention. So we can't say that there hasn't been bad Marvel films within the franchise before. I think we sort of maybe feels a little bit better about those particular ones is probably again because of the time. It was early on in the MCU stage. They were trying to obviously combine these films to have this cohesive story throughout all of the films, and because of that new and excitement around that, I feel like that translates on the films to make them a little bit more interesting and a little bit more passion filled than what we have got recently because of that. At the moment in the older stuff, we've had so many years to just be like film after film after film after film that is starting to get a bit saturated. And you've also got to understand that what every franchise would ever do is, if you are pulling characters from some sort of source like Marvel, like you're going to use all of your best characters straight away, because those are the characters that are going to hit with the fans. They're the characters that are going to get people invested. So once you've done that, and some of the characters have gone because of how long this has happened now, like Iron Man's no longer around, we've got no more Captain America, well, not the original anyway. You take those OP characters out of the equation, you're then left to have to pick characters that then fall second to that. And that's great because there are still some very great secondary characters in Marvel, but the fan base, every time you go further and further along, it's not going to have the same weight behind someone like Iron Man, Captain America. That franchise, there's not enough of the toys being made or sold. There's not enough game content that's just solo based around that character. There's not enough of a fan base for this character for a solo film to do as well as, say, a solo Iron Man film. And that's where we're at with Marvel now. We have to start picking the second tier ones that just don't carry as much fandom behind them. And that is going to affect the box office when it comes to people going to watch these films. So, like I said, I absolutely love Marvel, and there are certain films in the franchise that will always still be some of my favourite films. I still enjoy, obviously, looking at some of the comics. Again, some of the figures, 6-inch Legends figures, I've got a couple of them. I don't go absolutely mad on them because, again, when I come to collecting figures, Star Wars is my game. You guys know that. But I have got a couple of the Marvel figures that I use as shelf pieces, just to, bring a bit of life and interest to the shelves. But yeah, when it comes to Marvel, it's mostly the films I'm following, it's mostly the series I'm following, and obviously the cartoons from when I was a child I still delve into and watch. My quick synopsis on the X-Men 97 that they've just started doing, I am going to watch it, however I am very, very hesitant in thinking that they are going to do a good job with this. X-Men TV series, like a lot of people, probably was their first proper introduction to X-Men. See, the X-Men 90s animated TV show was like a staple of my life. I have cohesively watched every single episode at some point when I was a child, and I have delved into watching it again, not recently, but probably a couple of years back when it did eventually come to Disney. I started watching it again and watched all the way through it, and even watching it as an adult, I still enjoyed it. Now, the problem I've got, obviously, going with the new X-Men 97 series is, yes, okay, it's a continuation and that is great, but I saw the animated style of the series and the voice acting, and that was enough for me to realise that this is not going to be as good as I think people want it to be. I understand that to do these things now, everything's done on a computer, to try and get that original animated style, it's going to be hard, like, to try and recreate that unless you've got the original artists themselves and you do it in the same process of what animation once was at that time. But I feel like with something that's so loved by fans, they should have done that. And by doing that, it would have worked. But looking at it, I don't know. You guys can agree or disagree in the comments, tell me what you think, but to me, I look at this and I see the new Justice League cartoon films, or I see Invincible from Amazon Prime, which is a great series, by the way. I do like that series, and I think I'm just about to go into part 2 of season 2 in the next couple of days, and I will admit that is actually a good series, a little bit obviously more adult based, but animation style works, the story works, it's good. But when you've got that doesn't have a previous animation from, like, say, the 90s that they're trying to base it on, well, I don't think they do anyway. I haven't looked into Invincible to know enough about the character, but I do feel like this Invincible series they have on Amazon Prime is like the first Invincible cartoon series they've ever done, I think. And well, that's how I'm taking it anyway, because, like I said, I don't know enough about that particular character in their backstory. But you look at that and you see the new animation style and you think of the time that it came out and you understand why, and it works. When you're taking something from a previous thing, like the animated series of X-Men, and you're bringing it into the modern day, you're going to lose the charm putting it into this animation style, and I don't think it's going to resonate as well. And then, like I said, on top of that, I heard the first line of what Wolverine said on the trailer, and the voice acting was nowhere near what Wolverine should sound like. Beast doesn't look correct. Little things that are just gonna, unfortunately, bring it down, and it's not going to resonate with fans as well as I think it will, and it's not going to resonate with me as well because of these things. But I'm still going to watch it, because that's what it is. At this point, we've been invested with Marvel so much that even though these things don't hit as well as they once did, we still feel like we have to watch them. And yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll probably find some enjoyment in it somewhere while I'm watching it. Well, I hope anyway. But at that point, yeah, a lot of us are big fans of Marvel. We're invested in these things, so we feel that we do have to watch the next film, even if it isn't someone that we really would follow. But at some point down the line, that wonderful nostalgia bubble that everyone keeps using to their, ability at the moment by throwing it out in everything that we see, it's gonna get saturated, it's gonna lose its charm, and eventually they're gonna have to think of something new to turn everything around. And that's the way I see the future of Marvel going. Great films in the past, some didn't hit as well as others. As we're getting further and further into it, they're not hitting as well, but there are some parts that do also cohere with the story. But the nostalgia bubble is starting to slowly get smaller and smaller, and eventually it will just disappear. And it'll be interesting to see what the franchise of Marvel do at that point to turn it all around. Now, everyone's saying obviously the Deadpool and Wolverine film could be that turning point, but for me, if they're just going to fill it up with cameos that aren't going to be cohesive to the story, then it's not going to be the saving grace that everyone thinks it's going to be. It'll be a good movie, it'll be fun, I don't doubt that, but I don't think it will be this massive saving grace for the franchise that everyone's hoping this will be. But yeah, I just wanted to basically give a bit of information about what's going on with Marvel, what I think about it myself, and yeah, like, if you've agreed with anything I've said or disagreed with anything I've said in this video, I'd like to hear it in the comments, just because, I do like to get a little bit of conversation going, a little bit of debating going with some of you guys. Yeah, for now, I'm just going to end the video with what I think my top 3 films would be in Marvel, just so you guys again can leave your top 3 in the comments as well. So yeah, I think that my top 3 films so far in the whole of the Marvel MCU, so everything after Iron Man, not everything beforehand, because like I said, Spider-Man, the original, will always have a massive part in my heart because that was what I first grew up with. Blade, I love those films. X-Men, love them films. So I'm not going to include them, but when it comes to the straight MCU, so starting with the Iron Man film and working our way up to obviously this new Deadpool film that's going to cross over into it. So my favourite films out of these ones, I would say the third position, so third from being the top, would be Endgame. Obviously, having all of those characters turn up, it worked. It had some good emotional parts in it. It wasn't scared to lose some of their characters, which, I was happy to see that they were taking those risks. And I went to the cinema to watch it, and just the experience alone in the cinema was amazing. I haven't been to many cinema screenings where people cheer, cry, laugh out loud and interact with each other in that sense. And for me, when I went to there, that was like the first time I'd ever seen the crowd really reacting to a film in like that way. Because like I said, in England, we don't get overly hype about these sort of things. We're very quiet and stuff. We just kind of we enjoy things and we have a voice, but we don't go over extravagant on the whole, oh, there's a film coming out, let's go and check it out and get dressed up and all that. I think that's definitely something that happens more across the pond in America and that sort of area of the world, when it comes to going to the cinema all dressed up and making it into a full event and everything, or camping outside the cinema to get midnight showing and stuff like they used to do back in the day. In England it's just more of, oh, should we go see this film? I heard it's good. And you just turn up with, your friends or family, and you go and watch the film, and then normally have a discussion about it afterwards over a bit of food in the evening, or, something like that. So again, to see that reaction in the cinema was absolutely amazing. To be in just, a cinema in England where that normally wouldn't have happened. So yeah, that one is probably the third from being the top film because of the experience around it as well. And like I said, just to see for the first time so many characters running in and fighting together and it working was really cool. So my second favourite film in the MCU is going to be a real controversial one, but hey ho, this is just, my favourite. It doesn't have to be your favourite, but I really enjoyed The Incredible Hulk. And that's going to shock a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, well, the animation style was terrible. It was just CGI monster v CGI monster, but they didn't look right. You didn't have Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, and I get all of the criticism, but what you've got to remember is this was the first Hulk film that came out after we already had a Hulk film that was, in my opinion, really bad. So the fact that this Hulk film was easily 10 times better than the last Hulk film that we had, and it was part of this new ongoing MCU world building thing that they were doing at the time. Like, for me, it was just like, wow, this is awesome. And Hulk was always one of those characters that, even though I didn't keep up with the comics, I mean, I still collected the figures when I was a kid. I had like a Hulk figurine that you used to be able to break out of like a cage and stuff, and it was really cool. I also used to like have the Hulk fists, I think, growing up at one point. We used to watch the original TV serial of the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, that used to be on TV. I remember my mum putting those on for me in the background when I was a kid. I watched quite a lot of like shows that were like that, where they were obviously out way before my time, but because reruns were always a thing, there were so many shows I ended up getting introduced to when I was so young. That's why a lot of people are always like, oh, how do you remember these shows and everything? It's like, there were reruns, in the 90s, like these kids shows that, people grew up on, like my mum's age and stuff, like we had them rerun on stuff like Nickelodeon, and they made Boomerang for Cartoon Network, which showed Tom and Jerry and all the old Looney Tunes. So it's really funny when people look at me and go, oh, you must be too young to remember that. And it's like, I might have been too young to remember it coming out and being a new thing, but yeah, 90s had reruns all the time. And yeah, the shows were mostly shows that came out in the 80s, so it wasn't too far behind for us to be like still interested in wanting to, watch those shows and everything. So yeah, so like I said, Incredible Hulk, the TV serial, that was something I was totally always watching. Again, I know this is Marvel related, but I'm going to say something DC in it, but the original Batman Adam West TV series, I mean, I didn't watch every single episode. I wasn't a die-hard fan in that sense, but certainly my mum would put the TV on, and that would be, on in the background for me to enjoy, just if it happened to be on. Superman and Lois Lane Adventures, there was a 90s series of that used to play in the background when I was younger. Like I said, Xena the Warrior Princess, oh my god, remember that? I mean, some of you might not even remember it at all, but like, yeah, that was Xena the Warrior Princess, and then I think there was like halfway through, there was like Hercules turns up, and it was the adventures of Xena and Hercules, and oh man, like these shows were like so cool, and like I said, these are things that like I didn't choose to put on. This was just stuff that my parents would put on in the background and think, oh, it's got a superhero like vibe about it, he'll like it. And that's why I know a lot of these shows and why I grew up with a lot of these shows and stuff like that. And when it comes to the Marvel side of things, yeah. So with The Incredible Hulk, you know, it was that film that a lot of people are like, well, the CGI was bad, the cast is not the right cast, but I just really like the film. I like the fact that it has the idea of taking the Captain America secret soldier serum process to make these soldiers and incorporating it into their villain in the film, trying to make it so that he is becoming one of these super soldiers, but there's just something a bit not right there. I like that, and the thing is as well is that it did a great setup for what we saw in the first Avenger, which is obviously a really loved film. Captain America First Avenger was one of those ones like Iron Man that just hit straight away. But I just like the fact that, you know, in that film we have that discussion between Steve Rogers and I forget his name, the doctor who does the experiment on him, but we get that whole the whole discussion about how someone who has to be pure like in themselves, it's not that it's going to create a good person, that you have to already be a good person basically in order for it to do the right things and enhance you in the right ways. And that's why obviously, you know, the Red Skull ends up becoming evil, because his personality, his ideas and everything aren't the right ideas, and when he takes on that serum and it starts affecting him, that part of him gets elevated. And again, vice versa, Steve Rogers, good person, always wanted to do good by others, that part of him gets elevated. And that's why you have these two total Polaroid opposites. And I like the way that the Incredible Hulk film shows that with our villain. You know, putting him through that process, but then, you know, before we've even watched the first Avenger, we're starting to see that, oh, because he had the ideas that he wants to be the best and he's not scared of doing what he has to do to get there, that gets enhanced in him as soon as he takes that serum. And that's what pushes him to then take the next step, to be obviously going down the road of trying to get the Hulk's power inside him as well, which obviously turns him into Abomination. And then we get the massive CGI fight at the end, which again, those people say they don't like, but for me, I don't mind it. I think it was pretty cool. It's some pretty awesome stuff, you know, when it comes to the powers that we see Hulk take on. I think, don't get me wrong, I like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. I think he looks great on camera, but there's something missing with it. And I think it's ever since the first Avenger, we got the whole Hulk smash, and you know, there was a lot of like hits and jumps, and that's sort of what the Hulk does, but we didn't get to see any of his like thunderclap or anything, like any of his actual moves that like the comic obviously had in it. And then as soon as, you know, we got used to like, okay, well maybe in the next Avengers film when we see Hulk, he's going to do some of his moves then, some of his cool stuff. No, these started getting less and less Hulk and more Mark Ruffalo. And then eventually we had that whole smart Hulk thing that, you know, just, yeah, wasn't a great move. So, you know, I think when it comes to the Hulk films, the best one that, well, I know we've only ever had 2 Hulk films officially, but I still think that is the best one out of the 2, showing what Hulk is all about with some more of the kind of moves and everything that Hulk has. Like, I just think that worked more in his character than what the new Hulk is in the MCU. So for me, yeah, so obviously a controversial one for a lot of people, but for me, yeah, number 2 on the list. Yeah, I just really like that film. So the number 1 on the list for me is Winter Soldier, and for me, The Winter Soldier is probably the best MCU film. Why? Because it doesn't feel like an MCU film, and that's why I like it so much. It's hard to enjoy the MCU when you don't enjoy the cinematics, and that's not because obviously they're bad. I think, you know, a lot of the work that people do on the MCU movies are extremely good, especially to take it to the advancements that we have in like CGI and all that sort of stuff now. But Winter Soldier was the one film that I felt did justice to what we had before the MCU. And what I mean by that is that when you watch a Blade film, you don't feel like you're watching a superhero film. You feel like you're watching a dark, edgy, thriller, horror film that just happens to be about a superhero character. That's why it works. It's turning it on its head, it's giving it a twist, it's making it into something that we're not expecting. And by doing that, it kind of hits better, in my opinion. For me, like, watching The Winter Soldier is like watching like something like Mission Impossible. Obviously, like the fact that it's, you know, a cohesive story following what's going on. Bringing obviously another new character to the table, that obviously has then obviously his own character development in the future as well. I like all of that, but what really works about this film is that you could easily get lost in it like a normal action film, like watching something like Terminator, like watching something like Mission Impossible. Like, that's how it feels watching this film for me. It's like watching an action film. And I think like some of the films in the future have tried to capitalise on trying to go, well, okay, we'll treat this film as a horror film and just happen to have Doctor Strange in it. Or, oh, we'll treat this film as an adventure comedy and we just happen to have the Guardians of the Galaxy in it. Okay, I see what you're trying to do, but again, that's just capitalising on something that came out naturally originally, and now they're trying too hard to do it again. It doesn't work. This is the problem. I think you strike gold when you have an idea and it works, and that's great. You know, be thankful for that. I don't think that anyone should ever, you know, be disheartened on their achievements when they went through so much and so long thinking something wasn't going to work and taking a chance and a gamble, and then it works. That's brilliant. But then don't get suckered into thinking, well, they liked it the first time, they'll like it again. That's what they want. It's the whole, like, you could eat the same meal for a week because it's your favourite meal, but by the end of the week you then don't ever want to eat that meal again. And I feel like that's kind of what Marvel does a lot of, is with the MCU, something that they didn't think could work works, and then they get like tunnel vision, and that's all they want to give you is, oh, that worked last time, we'll give you that, we'll give you that, we'll give you that. And that's where we're at now. We've had the meal of the MCU giving us what we want, or what they think we want, for too long. And now we're getting sick. We don't want to eat that same meal. That's kind of the way that I see it with how they're trying to still do the MCU now, by saying, well, Captain America Winter Soldier worked so well because it was an action film that just happened to have a character in it. We need to do that again. And yeah, that's just how, you know, some of these films are now with the MCU, where they're just going like, oh yeah, we could do a horror film and just include Doctor Strange and other characters from the MCU in it. And at one point, like Blade, it worked. Why? It was new. And it fit with the character. We were invested after one film to want to see the other 3 films. and it felt in the character to be like that. And Doctor Strange, I've never seen as a horror character. I've always seen him as the wizard, the Gandalf, the Merlin of the story, not the big, crazy badass that can take on all the monsters. Not saying that his powers couldn't do stuff like that, just saying that when it comes to him being in a film, the first film made sense to me, the second film did not, in the tone. And I think it's because they were just like, oh, this is the genre we want to film, how can we incorporate this character into it? And yeah, like I said, the reason that the Captain America Winter Soldier is my favourite is because it has that, but it was the opposite way. It was like they were making a Captain America film, but then just happened to stumble into an action film territory, and it worked. It really worked. I love the character development in it. I love the action in it. I think some of the CGI, because of how minimalist they've gone with the CGI in it, it's mostly just the background shots, the helicarriers, mostly like explosions. Because it's so minimalist with the CGI in it, it makes for a really good film. Again, you haven't got a front and center big CGI monster on the screen that takes you out of it from being realistic. You've got a lot of on-ground shaky camera work, which obviously bodes well with choreographing fight scenes. You've got a lot of it in like downtown areas and on the ground. It's not always like flying around city skyscrapers and having to believe that this technology is out there that does exist. Don't get me wrong, they do obviously still incorporate a few bits of like technology, like the face morphing screen that Scarlett Johansson uses to pretend to be one of the other agents to get into S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously there's little bits of technology in that sense that it's just very subtle moments, and it keeps it very grounded in reality. Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, is my favourite character in the whole of the MCU. I think it's amazing how it's the tragedy of him being obviously a good person, then obviously getting lost in the snow, being obviously people thought he was dead, then getting recovered, brainwashed, and then having to go up against people who obviously he once loved as friends, to then have to now be not able to control himself, not know who these people are, and basically be the end of these characters, or potentially try to be the end of these characters. And yeah, I like that idea that throughout the film there's that conflict of he doesn't want to do it, but he doesn't know any better at this point, and his friend has to basically tell him so much stuff and to get through to him in order to basically bring him out of it. And yeah, I just really like that. I really like the continuation of Bucky's character when it comes to Civil War. It's not a perfect film enough for it to be in my top 3, but that section of the film between Bucky, Steve, and T'Challa, when they're basically confronting each other on the highway and stuff and fighting, I really like that scene. That was the best scene for me in the film. Bits of the discussions at the end of the film, learning obviously that Bucky was the one who killed Tony Stark's parents, and then obviously Iron Man finding out that was the case, and then that fight scene at the end, that was really good. Again, best parts of the film, those two sections for me. It was really cool to obviously in the Civil War to see the team Iron Iron Man and Team Captain America fight each other. It was fun, but also didn't really see the point of it, because, you know, you've got two classes of heroes fighting each other. Why? It makes no sense. For me, I just think it, okay, again, I guess it does sort of make sense, but like, yeah, does it though? I mean, why would Cap fall down to that level and start fighting a kid? You know, who's Spider-Man, who's obviously talking to, like, the fight scene was meant to be important and carry weight, but it didn't, because it felt like a training exercise. That's what it felt like. Like, it just felt like that it was like, okay, yeah, they're fighting each other, but no one's at risk. No one's gonna really perish, because they don't want to hurt each other. They just want each other to agree. It's like siblings, you know? That's how that battle felt. It felt like a load of siblings having a go at each other, roughhousing, and then, you know, 2 days later, you both go outside, play a game with each other, and you're best friends again. Like, you know, it's that's how it felt. It just felt like it was a load of siblings fighting each other, having a little bit of a tiff at each other, and then they were going to make up. And that's what they did. They did do that. So, you know, yeah, Civil War's got some great moments that lead off of the Winter Soldier, but for me, yeah, I just think it wasn't enough in there to make me want to watch that film so much all the time that, yeah, it doesn't work for me. But the Winter Soldier, absolutely amazing. It's the most amazing MCU film so far, and I don't think they're going to be able to hit that kind of level personally again, when it comes to films that they're doing. And just because that is my favourite film, and I don't feel like they're going to hit that top tier in my personal list ever again, that doesn't mean that they won't do it in the future for one of you guys or the younger generation who are just getting into these films now, because they haven't obviously been around for the previous ones. You know, if that's your sort of bag, if these new films are doing it for you, then great. That's amazing, and I'm happy for you guys, and I'm happy for the MCU delivering in that sense. But for me, Winter Soldier is always going to be my number one. I don't think they're going to be able to beat it. I am still going to obviously always be invested in watching what Marvel are doing. I am also always going to have a passion for the older Marvel films and rewatch those films. And again, like, there's always going to be little things, merchandise or figures or memorabilia or anything like that to do with Marvel, that if I like it, I'll still pick it up, because, yeah, who doesn't want a Deadpool keychain every now and again, or a, you know, 6-inch Legends figure on your shelf? Like, it's something I do. I like to buy these crazy little things and pop them in my room and, you know, collect. So for me, Marvel is still going to have that kind of impact on my life when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes to the films, I don't know if they're ever going to beat my number one pick, though. It'd be interesting to see if they ever do. Obviously, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm definitely going to go to the cinema to watch it. That's a no-brainer. But yeah, I don't know if, for me personally, in the future, they'll ever beat that particular film. So yeah, that's my top 3 anyway. But guys, look, I'm going to cut it here because I could be rambling on about Marvel forever otherwise. If you've enjoyed this video and you want me to talk more about Marvel or do some proper ranking videos in the future, maybe we'll do a list of my top 15 superheroes, and then maybe if you like that one, we'll do a list of maybe my top villains for the Marvel franchise. Maybe we'll do a whole MCU or a whole of Marvel content ranking video at some point, where I go through every single Marvel content I've ever watched, films, series, cartoons, and we rank them. We could do a video like that to do with Marvel. In the future, on the unboxing videos that we do on the Sundays every 2 weeks, eventually I will have things Marvel related to unbox as well, which is something that's going to be really exciting. So make sure to stick around for the Sunday unboxing videos that we do every 2 weeks, because, you know, we don't just do Star Wars. There's going to be some Marvel things on there. There might even be some other just miscellaneous franchises coming through for us to unbox in there as well. You know, these things that I'm unboxing on these Sundays, you know, they don't always have to be just figures or like, you know, memorabilia or anything like that, or replicas. You know, at some point I might buy a book, I might buy a comic, I might buy keychains like I mentioned earlier in the video. I might, you know, it could be anything that I'm getting, but if I feel like it's something that's really cool and related to something that's a franchise that people enjoy, I'll make sure to always unbox it on the camera, because I know that you guys like to see these little things, and some people will never own some of the stuff that I am probably picking up because it's very niche to what I'm enjoying myself or what I want. But again, it's just a little bit of fun, and gives you some ideas as well, even if you're not going to buy them yourself, to maybe use as gifts, or just, you know, float links to people who you know are going to enjoy those items or these videos about unboxing merchandise and other little things that we do. Remember, if you want to see any of the video ideas that I've mentioned today, leave a comment of what you'd like to see. If you want to mention who your favourite character is, or what your favourite film is out of the franchise, again, leave that in the comments below, because again, all of the comments that you write will help out the channel. And again, I want to try and get interacting with some of you guys out there and get a little bit of a discussion on, see what we can theorise about and everything like that. So I just want to say a big thank you to all of you guys that have stuck to the end and watched the video. If you have enjoyed this video today, remember to like, subscribe and get notified, because every time you do that, it's just one step closer to us bringing you more content. So enjoy the rest of your day or night, depending on what time you're watching this video, and remember to stay nerdy, stay weird, and peace out.